cross.
秋の海を見つめて思い出すあの夏の
Hello and welcome to another anime review. My name is BeBopAnime or Tyrone, and today we're looking at Suka Suka or WorldEnd. So with the story with this one beginning right off the bat is that pretty much the whole story itself then develops into a slow methodical tale about these two basically lovers, if you will, but there is a lot more into it and there's a lot more plot points that kind of get thrown into it but ultimately don't go anywhere. So kind of moving from that, let's talk a bit about this more or less about the story and how it develops overall with the characters. So Wilhelm and Kotali, Wilhelm being the protagonist and Kotali being a leprechaun slash fairy slash the kind of love interest, all get involved into this eccentric plot to where basically they live up on these islands, these floating islands, kind of a safe haven from these creatures down below, these creatures being these monsters that took over the surface. And pretty much Wilhelm gets assigned a job to where he goes to a warehouse and ends up guarding some weapons and some goods. Turns out it's actually these leprechauns, which these leprechauns slash fairies pretty much have these kind of powers engrossed into them as they're born. Pretty much they are born from human souls and whatnot, and they are born from previous lives, and they have these unique powers and whatnot that potentially can help these the whole surface, the whole island dwellers pretty much take over the surface again once more. But currently the whole plot kind of goes into that somewhat, but they explain it to a point to where it feels kind of poorly done, not really well done in that point. I mean, honestly, it just felt like it didn't go anywhere when it came to that type of stuff and explaining that type of stuff. Not only that, there's a certain scene where Wilhelm is confronted by one of his old comrades, since Wilhelm himself was a human way back in the day, fighting these monsters, and end up having to be petrified and defrost and whatnot. And he ends up meeting one of his old comrades, and what it ends up finding out is that they're using these leprechauns, and that's what they want to do, is producing more of these leprechauns so they can actually basically take over the surface again once more, using them as an army and as flak and whatnot. But Wilhelm was against this, and the plot kind of goes nowhere, to be honest. It's really not brought up ever again. Those characters themselves are not really brought up ever again. So it just kind of seemed pointless to even talk about that or even add it in at all. So that's probably one of the bigger issues that you might see and experience throughout this anime, is there's some story plot points that just kind of go nowhere. But one of the more interesting story plot points is, of course, the romance between Kotali and Wilhelm. Finding out that Kotali has something wrong with her that can potentially get her killed. Wilhelm does what he can to try to save her. There's some romantic elements that get involved, and kind of the ending of the story itself and the ending of this anime kind of develops into where it's a whole-on romantic story that you may or may not like. So depending on how you feel about certain endings. But anyways, though, moving on from that, the animation and sound. So I like the animation, and it's done very well. I think that when it comes to just basically regular scenes with the color palette as it is, it's done, perfectly fine. I don't actually have any problem with that. But where I do have a problem, though, in particular, is actually during the action scenes. The action scenes, in my opinion, felt a bit lackluster when it came to certain things, the monster designs and just the overall atmosphere when it kind of goes into this action mode and whatnot. It's actually understandable, though, because this story itself is slow and methodical, so it doesn't have that fast paced action and whatnot, and I don't think the animation team itself was looking to do that fully. So in my opinion, it's actually not bad that they have that type of they have kind of lackluster action scenes, but you can tell during those animations and whatnot, and during those scenes themselves. So keep that in mind if you're ever watching this. But anyways, I'm moving on from that. The sound itself, the sound, in my opinion, is done very well. The sound itself is done very well for the most part. It all fits in with the theme, and one of the bigger words you're always going to hear me say during this fucking review is slow and methodical, because ultimately, the story, the animation, and just everything comes together slow and methodically. It slowly gets revealed, things kind of happen at a slower pace, and the music also paces itself slowly to fit what it's trying to do, and kind of comes in where it's necessary and not where it's just outright intruding, and to be honest is kind of irritating. But for the most part, it comes in really good. The dubbed and subbed. So I personally only have watched the subbed. I know there's a dubbed version on Funimation, and all I gotta say is it's probably gonna be decent, if not good. But for the most part, if I'm just saying that out of an estimated guess, I'm not saying that at a pure fact. I haven't watched it. I'm not gonna waste a fucking $10 subscription on watching a couple episodes and not watching Funimation's shit ever again. So yeah, we're not going to go that far. But anyways, though, regardless of that, though, moving on to the verdict, if you will. So I want to say Suka Suka, in my opinion, is a very good anime for the most part if you like slow, methodical, fantasy type of anime. Especially with all these other anime that are action-based in a fantasy realm, it feels good to have one of these slower paced ones and kind of just take it slow, take the romance more or less into aspect. The other story plot points can just kind of go to the side. The animation done very well and slow, but the action scenes kind of not in its favor. Obviously, the music itself going with it very well. So overall, I do recommend this if you like a slow and methodical type of fantasy setting. But if you looking for that high-paced action and whatnot, you might want to try Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, ReZero, Grimgar, A Fantasy in Ash. Those are 3 great recommendations right there. Obviously, ReZero being the more popular one, so it'd be kind of weird if you haven't watched that. But anyways, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick review, and I'll see you guys in the next one. My name is BeBopAnime or Tyrone. See you later.